How close is close enough to the edge of a cliff? Like when you're walking towards an actual physical cliff, how close do you have to be before your nervous system throws up a flag and says, this is close enough? Most folks are going to need like a 5 to 10 or even 15-foot margin. Some of the thrill seekers out there whose nervous system thrives on adrenaline may walk their little tootsies up to the edge. And then some folks are going to feel that red flag go up at a 30-foot margin or even a 40-foot margin from the edge. This is often going to be the case with autistic people. That innate awareness of where your safety threshold is coming from your neuroception. It's coming from your nervous system. It's coming from the parts of your brain and your nervous system that are aware of your environment long before, more efficiently and quicker than your frontal lobe and your thoughts are. It's the part of your system that catches something that drops before you can even think through the fact that it's dropped, or that has your body react to jump scares. It's an innate thing. It's not a choice, right? And as children with underdeveloped frontal lobes, we're largely running around just responding to our environment via neuroception. As an undiagnosed autistic kid with maybe a 30-foot margin threshold, you may be told by adults around you, hey, you can get closer than that. You may look at your peers around you who have different neurotypes all walking to a 10 or 5-foot margin and wonder, ooh, why am I not walking that close? And you will begin to be trained by the world around you repeatedly over and over to walk closer to that cliff. And the only way that happens is by you being convinced to make the choice to walk closer to that cliff, or being forced. But I'm specifically talking about where you are being told, hey, go ahead, and you're encouraged to make the choice with your brain to walk closer to that edge despite all of the fight or flight or freeze or anything that's coming up in your body that's bringing up those panic feelings, those fear feelings, those feelings of danger. You do that enough times as a kid, you change how you perceive those signals in your body. So you eventually end up an adult who has no recognition of those signals from your body and a nervous system that has been so disrespected its whole life that it cannot find its own threshold anymore. Because every time your threshold is at 30 feet and you walk closer, that causes trauma. Now, trauma is not a bad thing. It's part of life, right? And just like a muscle, you have to go a little bit past your threshold in order to build capacity. But also just like a muscle, if you either are constantly going past the threshold with no recovery in between, or you're going way too far past the threshold so there can't be any recovery happening, or the recovery would have to be much longer than what you're giving it, the muscle starts to break down, can't build itself up anymore, and you start to tear. You have all sorts of problems. Same thing happens with the nervous system if that trauma is not given the space to resolve. And I bring all this up because I think it's important if you're doing somatic work or if you're doing nervous system healing work, either as an autistic person or with an autistic person, there's a difference between the trauma that results from constantly being forced from the outside to push beyond that threshold and the trauma that comes from your brain changing the way it perceives that threshold so that you yourself are constantly walking right past it because you don't even understand what it is. So if you're an autistic person or you're working with an autistic person who's trying to do nervous system healing, something that may be missing if you're not getting anywhere is the initial step of beginning to reestablish the relationship with where that threshold is, because it may be way farther back than where that person is used to drawing the line. It may take a long time to even begin to get a grasp on where that innate threshold is. And very little long-term nervous system regulation or healing can happen until you first reestablish that line. That's the first step. The next step is then beginning to figure out how to respect that line and make choices that honor that line.